Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the show. My name is John Clark of privatepracticeworkshop.com. I'm excited to introduce my guest, Nick Fuller from itherapy.com. Very short and sweet URL, easy to remember. I like it. We're going to get to Nick here in just a second. I'll say more about Nick, but for now, I want to say that I'm excited to be kind of kickstarting our content again. It's been a hot minute, as they say. I have no idea why they call it that.
Is that longer than a cold minute?
Right? It must be. Yeah. Mine's been like a medium minute or a scorching hot minute because it's been a couple months since we've had consistent content, but here we are kickstarting it anyway. And yeah, I'm excited to be back with you guys, and you can expect regular content now that we're back, a weekly podcast episode that is also streamed live on YouTube, which is what we're doing here now. So if you are here, feel free to ask questions in the comments, questions for our guest, Nick, and then we'll answer those either along the way or toward the end. So definitely let us know what questions you have along the way. Only other thing I can think of is we have a new round of Business Made Human coming up. That's my weekly mastermind group, helping you build a purpose-driven business, and a business that's really built around your personal strengths, your values, and your personal mission in life. So head to privatepracticeworkshop.com to learn more about that and to apply for our next round coming up. That is my little snapshot for the day. I'm excited to bring in Nick Fuller. Nick, we have a mutual connection in Amber Lyda, who's a recurring guest on this show. Hasn't been on in a while, but a recurring guest. And she's, as my mom would say, a real character, meaning she has a great personality and is a funny, memorable person. So Nick, I'll let you kind of introduce yourself in terms of who you are, what you do, and how you got here. And then we're going to get into talking about Squarespace, which will inevitably lead us into how to get people to your darn Squarespace site and all things SEO. So yeah, go for it.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, John. Thanks for having me here. Thank you for everyone watching. Appreciate it. Here because you have a cancellation.
That works.
Hey man, whatever it takes. I'm just glad you're here. Yeah. So yeah, I'm Nick Fuller. I'm with iTherapy. That's the letter I and therapy.com. You can check us out there. We do a few different things for therapists. We build websites. We have a course kind of to teach all the sort of nitty gritty of building a website through Squarespace. Have another course to teach SEO for therapists. We work, as you would expect with a name like iTherapy, we work only with therapists. We also have I'm calling it lately our suite of services. And that's if you're just starting and you want to start your private practice online, we bundle together your EHR, your video, your HIPAA compliant phone and fax and email. We give you one-on-one training with that. And we offer a clinical consult peer group, because I think one of the few downsides of working online is it can be isolating, but that peer group, it really helps out there.
Nice.
So I've been doing websites for more than 10 years and been working with therapists pretty exclusively for like the last 5 or so years, I guess now. It's funny, yeah, because Amber is actually the one that got me into working with therapists. She was like, hey, I heard of these iTherapy guys are looking for someone techie. Can you help? And I was like, oh, perfect, So that's how my relationship with iTherapy started. Is I didn't found iTherapy. iTherapy was founded by a clinician and her husband. It was, she started more than 10 years ago doing online therapy when things were pretty new in the space.
Yeah.
But it's grown a lot since there. Yeah.
Well, behind every private practice is like a really solid tech guy, or like 5 really solid tech guys or girls. And so we're happy to have you in the industry. Nick, I'm curious, kind of state of the union of sorts in terms of what life in private practice is like for therapists these days. It's been a few months since we've done an episode. There's this whole COVID thing that I don't know if you've heard about.
What's that?
Seems to affect every part of our lives, especially our industry, how we operate, demands for clients, strategies, business strategies for therapists going all online or some hybrid or whatever. This could be a whole can of worms, but you also have the rise of, tech companies and mental health that are, giving therapists ways to work online very quickly, although not always paying us well. That's a whole other soapbox. But what are you seeing in terms of the therapists you're working with, in terms of what do their practices look like right now? And also, what are the main things they're needing help with?
What a big question. Yeah, I'd love to
Mm,
hear your answer too on that. But
yeah.
um yeah, so with eye therapy, we work a lot with therapists that are wanting to work online, right? We don't work so much with therapists. I mean, we can, but we don't work very often with therapists that are only doing like in-person sessions. So, as you might expect, I mean, at the beginning of COVID, what, like March, April 2020, there were a lot of people coming to us and needing some extra help. Um, I think since then, some people did online just because of COVID, and like some of them didn't like it, and I understand that. I think there's like Zoom fatigue is real, uh but a lot of people found that turns out online is pretty nice, and that's kind of our sweet spot, are the people that really like doing the online work, people that enjoy working from home, people that are in their own private practice or in a very, very small group practice. That's where we are
Mm,
very helpful. And yeah, they like being their own boss and making their schedule. I think that many clinicians that made the transition, they there were a lot of waivers for HIPAA compliance at the time.
mhm,
So some people are kind of making sure that they're doing things the right way, and of course, we've been diligent about that from day one.
mhm.
The other thing is that insurance companies, I think this is one of the things that I'm seeing now, is insurance companies were covering telehealth, but now basically like everyone's scared that they're not going to, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I'm working with some different people that are trying to get more private pay clients, which it's out there. It's definitely they're out there. But I think like I don't know, like I guess what's your impression on the insurance companies and the telehealth? What have you been experiencing and seeing from other people?
Yeah, therapists, I've heard rising concerns about that, and also that, there's fear, right, of therapists, of insurance companies getting kind of squirrely about it. There was when COVID first hit, it was things were like very flexible in terms
Right.
of how we meet the needs of
Yeah.
people. And I think that's a good thing. It kind of
Yeah.
shook it up a little bit, whether it's working across state lines temporarily or otherwise, or um, uh, yeah,
You-
where the therapist could deliver the service virtual or in person.
And
And yeah, my guess is my sense is that it has accelerated some changes that were inevitable. The
yeah.
same way that like big tech companies like the one my wife works at, are fully remote now, probably indefinitely. And you
Mm-hmm.
have this remote workforce where people can be anywhere. And it also creates amazing job opportunities for people in places where they normally couldn't work for, in my case, a San Francisco tech company, with us living here. So
Hmm.
I think it's very different. I think a lot of therapists, Amber Lyda, in working with mostly online therapists, I think was uniquely positioned, right? And that a lot of therapists wanting to build an online practice, not necessarily knowing how.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think a way they try to get there faster is through getting on board with companies like Talkspace or BetterHelp, or getting on insurance panels as a referral stream, right? Yeah, Nick's giving a big
The
thumbs
thumbs
down
down.
on the
Yeah.
YouTube, and I'm giving you the audio version of that, and I would second that thumbs down times 100. Um, I guess, let's get into more the nitty gritty, right? Because
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. There's a million ways to build a practice, and if you had to build an online practice in, let's say, 30 days, what are the things you would do as it relates to getting found online? This is a big question. I also have therapists that say, hey, I want to start a practice. I'm licensed in North Carolina. So do I just start the website and then put in North Carolina therapist? Like, is that enough? How do I get traction with Google? I mean, there's
Yeah.
tons of questions, right? If I'm private pay, how does that affect things? So like, where would you start someone, or with iTherapy, where do you guys start off with on the marketing piece of the business?
Great question. Great question. Um, so oftentimes, well, okay, the first thing I want to say is, even if you're going to be offering services online, that doesn't mean l- that you need to kind of forget anything that you might have known or might have thought about marketing a practice that would have been brick and mortar, right? A lot of the same like techniques and the same tools, and a lot of it overall is going to be just as effective, right? So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. Where I like to start with someone that's brand new is a Psychology Today profile, right? No one's going to fill a practice generally with Psychology Today, but like Psychology Today is, generally a part of a lot of like successful marketing strategies, right? And it also it starts you kind of getting in the right groove of things, you know. I should say, but that assumes that you already know that what your niche is, right? And who your ideal client is, right? That's definitely a number one, right? I see, like,
Oh yeah, yeah.
um, I see you, Oasis Mental Health, and
Yeah, it's a great question that we're probably going to answer fairly soon. So on
yeah,
YouTube, someone is asking Oasis Mental Health, what are the popular words needed to add into your website to attract clients? I'm a telehealth therapist. And
mhm.
what she's probably saying is, Nick, can you just do my SEO for me during this podcast interview and do my keyword research and send me
Right.
and optimize my page descriptions? And so
Well,
we're gonna give you part of that information today and teaching you how to fish, but
yes, yeah. So it's a good question. What I'll say, so like SEO is one of the strategies, and it's usually not necessarily like the very first thing. Like I said, I think I'd start with like Psychology Today, that sort of thing. But as you're kind of developing, then you can focus on SEO. So popular keywords, there's not like there's not a one size fits all solution, right? There's not. I can't tell you like, oh, well, just put this in your website and you're done, and you're gonna rank. I wish I could, uh, but what you do want to do is what's called keyword research, right? Um,
yeah. And
and
let's kind of mark that as step one, right?
exactly,
For therapists that are wondering where to start, or if you have a brand new website or a website that maybe isn't brand new but has zero traffic,
yeah,
right? And Google doesn't know where you exist, right?
yeah,
Or what market you're trying to serve. So yeah, that's great.
yeah, yeah. Yolanda says, by the way, I think you should start with storytelling and marketing. The key is to specialize in therapy. Also, totally agree, Yolanda.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. If I think what you're saying in specialize in therapy is having the niche, and I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
And knowing like if you're storytelling and marketing, all of whether it's your Psychology Today profile, the text on your website, anywhere that you're talking to your ideal client, I know you guys, and you're good at your job, and I know that you can describe the problems that your ideal clients are having even better than they can, right? If you're doing that, then everything else is going to be downhill, right? If you're doing that in your
Hmm.
marketing copy, whether it's your Psychology Today, your website, everywhere else, then your ideal client is going to, oh man, Oasis Mental Health or Yolanda, they get me. They understand exactly,
Hmm.
like they said it better than I could. I need to work with them, you know? So
It's a great preface to everything we're about to talk about, right? Because I will also say not all traffic is created equal, meaning you have to have relevant traffic, but also you could have a site that has 1,000 people a week, 1,000 visitors a week. But if your site isn't converting people to either pick up the phone or schedule a call or whatever it is, none of what we're about to talk about is going to really matter, right? So
right.
Yolanda is right in that um, yeah, you have a clear niche and an idea of who you help and how you help them. And then you find a way to talk about that in compelling plain language. You learn just enough about copywriting to be dangerous, or find someone who knows enough to help you create a compelling message that is very much speaking to the client's story and how you can help. Obviously, there's Donald Miller and StoryBrand as a good template for all of this. But it is true. This is a very important place to start before you then worry about getting loads of traffic.
Right. Right.
For today, and talking mostly about how to get traffic, that's kind of where we're focused. And keyword
Right.
research is a step that a lot of people do overlook, or just
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
well, I'm a Chicago therapist, I should just type in Chicago therapist. So tell us why that's not always the right thing to do, Nick.
Well, yeah, I do think that like focusing on local keywords is actually a really good strategy, right? But it does depend on kind of where you're at, right? If you're a Chicago therapist or a therapist in NYC, like boy, that's there's a lot of other people there, right? I live in Wilmington, North Carolina, and in this city, there's I think 150,000. In the whole county, there's like 250,000. That's like what, like a big apartment complex in New York City, right? Like, I mean, like, but in my area, if I was and again, like to your point, Oasis Mental Health, what keywords do you want? If you're in that sort of area, you know, about 250,000 like mine, I could target something like therapist in Wilmington, North Carolina, and that's probably actually going to be pretty effective for me, right? That kind of, again, even though I might be totally online and I might be able to serve all of North Carolina, focusing on that kind of local keyword is going to be something that I can actually work on and actually rank for and bring in the traffic that I need. Go ahead.
That part is extremely important. I have a lot of therapists asking, a perfect scenario, right? They're saying, I'm licensed in North Carolina. I want to have an online practice.
Right.
Where do I start, right? Do I just
Right.
target the whole state or type in North Carolina therapist,
Right.
etc.? And I always recommend starting small, right? Because
Yeah.
ultimately Google is trying to understand you as a local business. And even though you're not
Yeah.
brick and mortar, it's the best place to get started. And once you have some domain authority for Wilmington, North Carolina therapist, or
Yeah.
Wilmington, NC, EMDR therapist, right, or
There you
whatever it
go.
is, it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be easier than to pull in traffic from the town over, and then the town
Mm-hmm.
over, and then Durham and Raleigh and
Yep.
Charlotte and on, right? But there is a bit of a snowball effect like that. Yeah.
That's one thing I love about SEO. I call it compounding benefits. You know, as you're
Yeah.
building that authority, you're going to get more. But I like too in your example, you didn't say then you're going to find people that are searching statewide, because at least in my keyword research, I don't know if you've kind of found some other things, but and it changes in different states. The only
Mhm.
state where I've found like people that are searching like therapist in the whole state is like Vermont. Right,
Yeah.
places that are fairly small. At
Yeah.
anywhere else, it does. At least in my experience, it doesn't happen. People are searching locally.
Which I'm pretty sure Vermont only has like 7 therapists, so they're probably all on page 1. So no, I'm kidding. I've never been to Vermont. I bet it's beautiful, and I bet I could compete with my SEO there very quicker than San
Yeah.
Francisco.
Right?
Um,
Yeah, yeah. I bet San Francisco alone has more therapists than all of Vermont. I would take that
extremely
bet.
steep
Yeah.
competition. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, getting that ball rolling, I think, is huge. Also, even looking at not assuming that people are necessarily searching online therapists,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
3 years ago, right, when I had started doing online therapy 3 or 4 years ago, even, and it was new, right? It wasn't something
Yeah.
that most people were doing, and it could have been a modality that more people are looking for.
Yeah.
Now they might look for EMDR therapist, San Francisco,
Yeah.
and once they inquire, they say, "Oh, and I want this to be virtual, by the way." Right.
Right.
So it's with our models changing, right? And with the market and the climate and just the world changing, it's not necessarily the thing to do to say, North Carolina online therapist.
Yeah.
The point is, all has to be based on facts and data that comes from some thorough keyword research.
Yep.
Are there favorite tools that you guys use? And I know some might be more
Yep.
paid high-end tools versus one that you might teach a therapist to use on their own.
Yeah. Yeah, the one that I like using and I teach therapists to use in my SEO course is moz.com, moz.com. Yeah,
Yeah.
I bet
Hmm.
you're familiar with that
Yeah.
one, right? Yeah, it's great. It's pretty easy to use. You can well basically the way that I'll use it, and you can I kind of walk through this process in the course, but um if I was to work with, like, let's say I started my private practice in Wilmington, I might say, hey, I wonder if people are searching for EMDR therapy in Wilmington, right? I'll go ahead and I'll just do that. Well, I might do that search and I'll see what pops up. But actually, before for that one, I might plug that into Moz first and do a keyword search, or yeah, and then with that data, Moz is going to tell me how much traffic there is with that keyword, right? And it's going to tell me how competitive that keyword is, right? So if it's something, it's also going to tell me the like the click through rate, how many people are searching that and then actually like clicking on things, right? So the real sweet spot that you're looking for is something that has traffic and has a good click through rate, but isn't very competitive, right? So, if you wanted to rank for just the word depression, boy, like, good luck. You're going to need
Yeah.
an SEO team for that. But if you want to rank
Yeah.
for like EMDR therapy in Wilmington, North Carolina, that one's probably, and the question with that one is there going to be enough traffic for that to be worthwhile?
And intent, right? So this is
Yeah.
where intent comes into play in a huge way. Like I was saying, something like, what is EMDR versus
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
EMDR therapist San Francisco or EMDR therapist near me or even a neighborhood in San Francisco is an extremely high intent
Right.
keyword phrase, right? That also might have less traffic or less competition, but again, it might be more powerful for your business in terms of people actually knowing what service they want, calling you for it, seeing that you're the expert, right, and being ready to start that service versus going, hey, what is EMDR, and clicking enter. So intent is huge, right? And
Yeah.
again, like 100 clicks on that is going to have a very different effect on your business than 1,000 clicks on what is EMDR.
Right.
In
Right.
fact, I've had some of our clients end up ranking for things that, like having a blog post that answers what is EMDR, right? And it explodes their traffic, and it's all over the country, all over the world. And they're going, why am I not getting more clients? You
Right.
know, because in this case, it's not relevant local traffic for
Right.
their services. It'd be great if their main purpose of the site was to teach, to write content about EMDR, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing. That's what, and that's why, as I'm talking about keywords, I'm thinking, EMDR therapy in Wilmington, yeah, these are going to be the high intent, but it's also going to be like qualified traffic. It's going to, that's another advantage of working locally, because they're going to be people that are in areas that you're at least licensed in. Right.
Yeah, 100%. So doing some of that keyword research, and obviously this is not going to be an exhaustive lesson today on how to do this, but I want therapists to know in broad strokes how this stuff happens, whether you're doing
Yeah.
it yourself or taking
Yeah.
Nick's course, or if you're hiring someone to do it for you, that you know
Yeah.
roughly what they are doing, right?
Right.
There's a lot of people and even companies that will say, we will quote unquote do your SEO. And a lot of therapists just have no idea what that means.
Right.
And I want therapists to be equipped with enough knowledge to know what it means,
Yeah.
right? So they've done their keyword research. Maybe they've got some phrases to use for their strategy. What do they do next?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. Yeah. I think if anyone's, if you're got your website bundle on some, subscription service somewhere, you know what I'm talking about. Yeah. They say like we're doing your SEO. Cool. Ask them, what keywords are you targeting? Right?
Yeah.
If you have anyone doing your SEO, ask them, all right, great, what keywords are you targeting? And how did you determine those because those are good fit keywords for me? If they don't have reasonable answers for you with that, then I would be looking elsewhere, right?
100%. Yeah.
Um,
I don't know how we haven't met sooner, because you and I have all the same chips on our shoulder. Allegedly, because I've been preaching this ever since
Yeah.
I started this work. And this is why I developed that chip on my shoulder of therapists wanting to protect therapists from either getting ripped off or not knowing what they're getting, right? And having someone say, I'll do your SEO or do your Google ads or whatever.
Yeah.
We need to know enough to be dangerous to know how to outsource that, or
Right.
trust someone with that are part of our business. So
Yeah, at least enough to know like the right questions to ask, right? I like to make an analogy too that, like building a website on Squarespace is actually like ridiculously easy. Doing some SEO is not as hard as you might think. You need to know a few things, but it's not actually that hard to get the job done. Especially again, because you're therapists in private practice, right? You might be on your own, or maybe you have like a smallish group. I'm not probably not talking to huge group practices, right? So you need what? Like if you're a solo practice, like a couple dozen clients or something,
right,
like
exactly.
you don't need SEO to compete with
Yeah,
Amazon,
a couple inquiries a week or a month,
Right.
could even be enough.
Yeah.
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 So I think, knowing the right questions, and then ultimately, like, are they bringing you clients? If you're going to do SEO work, like you should be committed to it being a long-term strategy, right? Google doesn't want like fly by night, people to suddenly rank for something like COVID cures overnight. That would be super bad for everyone, but also bad for Google, because we'd lose our trust, right?
Yep.
So SEO takes some time, but if you've been working with someone in for like a few months or close to 6 months, and you're not seeing any difference at all in the number of actual clients you get in, then you definitely should at least ask some questions and probably think about an alternative, because that is the metric that really matters. Are you getting the clients?
Yeah. We've been through a lot of these steps on the show before in other episodes and with other SEO gurus. So again, beyond keyword research, then you're going to place those keywords in the right places on your website.
Yep.
You're going to index those pages with Google. You're going to start good content strategy. I'm curious to pick your brain a little bit about backlinks and even internal linking, because these are two things that I think get left off the table, or therapists see it as either optional, or it's this weird final step or like extra step that I think also seems hard in terms of how to do it. Like, do I need to just let me just have you explain it in terms of what it is and how important is it for us?
Yeah, well said. Yeah, so going back to you were saying like step one is the keyword research, right? Yeah, that's kind of that's the way I teach it in the course. Step one is keyword research. Step two is like on-page optimization, so all that other things you were mentioning, and some of that can be really easy, and you don't have to make it super hard. One of them's like just put that keyword on your page, right? Like it seems obvious, but sometimes you can make that mistake. So that's on page, but link building, super great question. Links, my analogy there, I got analogies for everything, man. No, my analogy there is
Just like a therapist, we had a course on analogies and metaphors. It was ridiculous.
that would sell.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I think links are like the currency of SEO, right? The more links you have, the more like SEO wealth you have, right? And again, if you think about it, it makes sense. I mean, ultimately, a search engine is just an algorithm, right? It's a piece of code, it's some function somewhere that Google wrote that is just trying to give you relevant results, right? Well, how are they going to measure what's relevant for your search term? Turns out, I mean, when we like something, whether it's a New York Times article or a funny cat meme, we're probably going to link to it, right? Uh, I definitely have linked to a number of funny cat memes, So that's a great metric for them to judge like the quality of any given web page on a site.
Mm.
So the more links you have, the better. The more like it translates to what you were talking about, authority.
Well, it's important too to think about Google and kind of the psychology of Google, right? So if Google is trying to serve good, reliable, trustworthy resources to a consumer, right, then it makes sense that number one, you have explained thoroughly and accurately what your business does, and it truly does that.
Yep.
And you have other sources that are trustworthy as well, referring people to your business, in this case to your website, which builds trust and it builds that web, so to speak. And increases the trust with Google in that regard.
Right.
They're trying to create a good experience for the consumer, right? And the more trust you have, the more traffic you have, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What about the internal linking piece? I mean, is this something therapists should think about? And
Yeah, definitely. So generally when I'm building a website, I'll do, of course, a homepage and about page. Most of the therapists I work with, they have like two or three kind of either, I call them services, but they're sort of like niches, And then of course we have the contact page. We're always driving to that contact page. We want to make sure every page has a call to action to go like, hey, talk to me and let's schedule that consult, right? Um, so that's kind of internal link number one, really. Every page is going to have I tend to put a couple links through the page over to that contact page. Um, Go ahead.
no, I'm just
Okay. All
soaking
right.
it up. Thinking of my
uh,
action steps after this interview.
Gotta make sure we have those calls to action, man. Calls to action. So that's number one, like internal link. But then certainly on that home page, when you're talking about yourself a little bit, that's a good opportunity to link to your about. And then
Mhm.
of course, the main links are going to be on your menu. Where this really comes into play, the internal links. Let's say that I was doing, let's say I did depression. I specialized in depression here in my area in Wilmington, right?
Mhm.
Well, it's winter. Maybe I'm going to talk about like seasonal depression, right?
Mhm.
I'm going to do a blog post about that. My blog post, I want that to definitely link not only to my contact page, because every page should have your call to action, right?
Mhm.
Uh, Drill that in, but also I would link over to like my sort of main depression service page.
Right.
The more of the if you the way to think about it is like a wheel with a hub and spokes, right?
Mhm.
So the center hub is your main page on your website that maybe talks about depression or like your main service. But then if you're liking SEO as a strategy, you're loving that people are coming to you, you like doing some blogging, some writing, you can absolutely create more spokes from that central hub that are sort of different aspects of that central hub, and then they all link back to that central hub. That will build more authority to that page of your central hub, and there'll be more ways and more keywords that you're ranking for from those different blog posts, more opportunities for people to find you and find that information.
Excellent. Yeah, I like it. You're creating a web within your website and also um, creating a web within the rest of the web. What about
Webs within webs, or
I
we're
know
being
it's very
Spider-Man. It's really awesome,
I know
like,
it gets very meta like Zuckerberg quickly. The
not that
the
kind of meta, the good kind
I
of
know,
meta.
right?
Yeah.
I have to do another episode about that. The I also see a lot of therapists who will link, they will say something like, seasonal depression, and then link to an article on Psychology Today or something like that.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about that?
Some of that is good. Those are outbound links, right?
Hmm.
And basically, if you're linking out to something that's high quality and relevant, and you're the readers of your website aren't going to click that link and then immediately like close it, so the bounce rate's low, then Google's going to see that and they're going to be like, oh well, again, Google is trying to provide relevant, good, high quality
Hmm.
content to everyone that's doing searches, right?
Yeah.
So if you're sort of doing the same and you're providing relevant, good, high quality content to your readers, Google's going to see that and they're going to be like, great, I can trust this person. It's going to increase your authority. Now, all that said, I mean, these are good things, right?
Hmm.
But way more important is make sure you have some keywords and put some thought behind what the keywords are going to be on your page. Make
Hmm.
sure that those keywords are actually on the pages. That's like and then doing a little bit of that link building. Like these pretty core fundamentals are so much more important than the more nuanced little adding stuff
Hmm.
of like having some outbound links and that sort of thing.
And again, it also depends on where you are, what market you're in, right? So again, if I'm moving to Wilmington, North Carolina, I'm going to have to do less than I have to do in San Francisco.
Yeah.
In fact, years ago when I moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, it's a small city, it's a medium-sized city, right? But I went from San Francisco to Charlotte,
Yeah.
and within 3 or 4 months was able to rank for terms like Charlotte counselor, Charlotte counseling, things like that. And then as the area grows, that site has definitely maintained its position.
Wow.
Um, so it's yeah, this is my former group practice that I then sold in 2019. But it all just depends. You have to filter all this through your market, and where you actually are, and the goals for your business, and how much traffic is enough, and
Yeah.
all that stuff. Yeah.
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 Yeah, well said. I was, being the kind of nerd I am, I'm like, what is the population of Charlotte? And like less than 1 million. Turns out
Yeah.
San Francisco is also less than 1 million, but that's just San Francisco proper. And like
Yeah. We're
every,
on
yeah,
7 by 7 square miles, and then the rest of the Bay Area is massive and dense. And
right,
yeah, it's
right.
confusing.
I've never been, listen, it's a big tangent here, but I've never been to San Francisco yet. But like the more pictures I see, the more I'm like, I need to go there. It looks beautiful.
It's unlike anything else in the US. I mean,
Yeah.
the views are outrageous. The sights you see, I drove across the Golden Gate Bridge this morning, taking my daughter to a museum, and then the museum was like at the foot of the Golden Gate Bridge on the Marin side. And it's just crazy. It's still not normal for me to live here. I drive across the Golden Gate Bridge and I'm like, there are hundreds of tourists, like sobbing because they've dreamt of seeing this. And I'm like, I'm just trying to get a sandwich, or, by that I mean a PBJ sandwich at the museum that was $14. And that's the other side of San Francisco / life. It's an interesting place, but if you come, text me first so I can give you the real San Francisco tips. So
Yeah.
yeah, again, just doing enough for where you are. And again, I think intent is huge. For instance, I have a client who does selective mutism therapy in Charlotte, right? And so, that's again such a smaller pool of traffic, but it's so niche and so specialized, and her entire practice is around that.
Yeah.
So again, 50 visitors a month to her website
Hmm.
might be more than enough for her solo practice. In fact,
Right.
it is,
Yeah.
so
Because the people that find it are people that are really looking, right?
100%.
High intent.
High
Yeah.
intent. Yolanda says, I think marketing in North Carolina is like taking candy from a baby, hopefully not my baby. Now Miami is a jungle.
Right.
She probably means that literally. It's probably a swampy climate, but also a jungle in terms of SEO jungle competing for page
Right.
one jungle.
That's
Yeah.
Miami's an urban jungle, man. Like,
Yeah.
but Miami's crazy. You land in the airport in Fort Lauderdale and you start driving west, and it's not long until you're seeing gators. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah. So totally agree with you, Yolanda. At least in sentiment, maybe not a taking candy from a baby, and definitely not John's baby. That's not cool. But yeah, like so if you're in a more competitive area, I would say you need to niche down even more,
Yeah.
right?
100%.
Yeah. Um, we talked about, yeah, maybe EMD therapy in Wilmington, but yeah,
In the MDR.
what was it you were just saying in Charlotte's that you're
Selective mutism. So there's children, young people who it's an anxiety based disorder where they become mute, right? Or kind of like psychologically mute for not a biological reason, but a psychological one. And it's a very specialized kind of treatment that a therapist would do with it. So they say the riches are in the niches. And again, it just depends on where you are.
That's a niche right
Someone
there.
is there. Yeah, there's a ton of therapists in Florida. Absolutely. But here's the other thing too. People are always like, oh, there's, it's too competitive. There's too many therapists in Florida. Well, wherever there are a lot of therapists, that also means there's a lot of clients and consumers who
that's
need
true.
your help. So there is opportunity, and you have to, from a marketing perspective, look for what they call green pastures, right? Which is fields, patches of grass or entire fields that haven't been chewed up entirely yet, or are maybe smaller, and just opportunities in the market. I have a few of those right now that we're, kind of targeting and carving out some traffic within San Francisco, and it's really working.
Nice.
And there's no way I'm going to tell you guys what those are, because then my competition is going to start going after them. So someone else, Tola Lisa, says, what about Los Angeles?
So my advice for Utah also is like, the bigger your area is, the more you're gonna niche. So what I'd like, and Tola's asking what niches would you recommend? I don't know off the top of my head. I would be using Moz to kind of do the keyword research, but I'd love to hear Tola, like, what niches are you targeting so far and what's your success? Same for you, Yolanda. In Miami, what niches are you targeting? To your point about greener pastures, that's something that I've recommended too. Again, I work with like a lot of people that are online. So even if they're in Miami or San Francisco or Los Angeles, that doesn't have to be where they're focusing all their energy on getting their clients, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can absolutely like build a page on your site that says, therapy in, Pasadena or whatever, therapy in Orange County, California, therapy in Jupiter, Florida, therapy in Fort Myers, Florida, and try to target those people that are maybe not in somewhat less competitive areas, but they
100%.
still are areas where, they have a high enough income that they can pay your rates and that sort of thing, right?
Yeah, they call it the low-hanging fruit, right? So within the greater Los Angeles area, so Tola Lisa, or maybe your name's Lisa, is saying her niche is OCD, right? So OCD in Los Angeles, tighten that up even further, say OCD in Pasadena or in Long Beach or whatever. That's basically the only parts of LA I know, apparently. You want to see where you can be competitive, right? And again, when you're doing the keyword research, you're looking for volume, and you're also looking at competition score. So that's going to show you what's realistic in terms of you ranking.
Right.
The other thing with niche, you have to back way up and say your niche should be a natural overlap between your passions, your training, the work that you actually want to do, right? So you can't force your niche either, right? If you build an entire practice around OCD just because you felt like you should, or someone told you should, or an SEO person told you should, you're gonna wake up with a very unhappy practice, before too long. So it has to be a natural intersection of what you actually love and are good at, and intersecting with an opportunity in the market. I will also tell you, again, this is another little secret of mine, something I'm experimenting with, is having a couple different brands for different niches, especially when you're in more of an urban area. So let's say, for instance, Lisa does OCD in Los Angeles and a part of Los Angeles, but another unrelated part of her practice is forensic psychology or ADHD testing in Los Angeles, right? So she could do well if she had the time and money and the commitment to grow two separate brands, right? If she was starting from scratch, to grow those highly relevant kind of niche brands in the Los Angeles area. This is something that could work in terms of both being competitive with with traffic and competitors, and also from a brand perspective. Someone lands on your site and sees this entire practice is dedicated to ADHD testing, and the consumer thinks, wow, this person must be really good and really the expert that I'm looking for. So might take a lot longer, right? But again, in urban areas, I've seen people do this successfully. And even in the Bay Area, I see people do it for like a whole brand just for social anxiety, in Berkeley or whatever it is, even though they have another like main brand or personal brand. Lisa, I hope that helps. Yolanda, we'll wrap up here in just a minute, but Yolanda says ADHD in children and adults, evaluations and therapy. So,
yeah. First of all, well said. I think that's quite an expert strategy, but I think that's definitely going to like be super effective. Well, not like expert, but like high tier strategy. If you're in a competitive area, I like that idea. Yeah, ADHD in children and adults. Like, I did a very quick search just for ADHD testing
Nice.
in Miami. Like, boy, yeah, there's a little competition, like umiamihealth.org. I think that's University of Miami.
Hmm.
So I think, like, with that, I'd be trying to figure out how can I sort of niche the keyword even more. What's going to be like a less competitive keyword that sort of has the same idea as ADHD testing in Miami, but isn't going to be as competitive. I wonder if you did Coral Springs, ADHD testing in Coral Springs. This looks a little bit less competitive. So even like, I mean, Coral Springs is sort of right next to Miami, almost like a suburb, right? But Google treats it as like a completely different keyword. Everything, like, even if I typed ADHD testing in Coral Springs FL, Google treats that like a totally different keyword too. So, you kind of just do some different testing with these sorts of things and try to find the right fit that's going to not
Yeah,
be super competitive, but still have that high intent, qualified traffic that you're looking for.
definitely. Going to, Lisa's question. So a tool that I use often is Uber Suggest. It's a free tool, free to an extent.
Yeah,
And if looking at OCD Therapist Los Angeles, um, the monthly volume is only about 90, but the difficulty score is relatively low. It's something that you could probably compete for. So that'd be something to look into, and also looking at related search phrases. So are people typing in that? Are they typing in the full obsessive compulsive disorder? Are they typing in OCD therapy LA or OCD therapy Long Beach or
yeah,
whatever it is, right? So looking at that
right,
search volume and just being curious about
yeah.
what's happening. And the key is not making assumptions, right? And just plugging in stuff in your website and then praying that,
Oh yeah.
as someone called it, Uncle Google gives you clients.
I love Uncle.
We
Yeah,
can only be so fortunate if
right.
Google
No,
blesses
yeah.
us.
You like, I make an assumption, but I don't put it on the website. I put it on Moz or, yeah,
Yeah,
Uber Suggest. You
it's a
can go
few.
to that.
We want to confirm or disconfirm, right, and then go off of actual data. Nick, I've run us over time because we're having so much darn fun, which probably says a lot about us that we're both a little nerdy on this stuff. I'm gonna have you back on, for sure. It's been great talking to you. If you're just tuning into the episode, definitely go back and watch from the beginning because we got into the thick of it pretty quickly with how to do your SEO. Talked a little bit about kind of um, state of the union in terms of private practice climate right now, private practice online, private practice plus COVID, things like that. And now I'm going to have Nick lead us out with his call to action, how people can reach out to him, which is exactly what Lisa's asking. And Nick, thanks again for being here.
Absolutely. No, my pleasure. My pleasure. And yeah, I had fun too. I'd be happy to get back in and chat another time. And I guess we must have been somewhat okay because at least we've got, some people chatting with us the whole
Yeah.
way through, right? Yeah, thank you guys. Thanks for listening. Very happy to be here. If you'd like to learn more about me, my company, what we do, it's the letter I, the word therapy.com. There you can kind of check out, like I was talking about, our suite of services. If you're just starting, that could be a great fit for you to help you get started. We can build you a website if you'd like. I have my courses teaching you how to build your own website on Squarespace, which I'm telling you is easier than you might think. And I encourage you to give it a try if you're at all interested, because if you just jump into Squarespace, you get a free trial and you have nothing to lose. And I also have a course on SEO. Lisa and Yolanda, I think, if you've been listening this long, then you might want to check out the course just because it's going to be more of the same, but with a lot more, detail. And I really just kind of walk through like my whole process through like video screen share and teach you how to do it.
Awesome. Nick, thanks again for being here. Like I mentioned to you guys, from the PPW side, we are just now kickstarting our content again. You're going to see weekly content coming up here soon, start at the beginning of January. And then that is kickstarting our next round of Business Made Human, which is our weekly mastermind, helping you build a purpose-driven business. If you're interested in that, head to privatepracticeworkshop.com. Wherever you're listening or watching, make sure to subscribe and comment. That really helps us grow channels and help more therapists. So until next time, thank you guys again for being here. Nick, thanks so much for being a great guest. And yeah, take care, guys. See you soon. Cheers.
Thanks. Bye.